cancer diagnosis at the age of 32, my mom and I talked a lot about the shock of that diagnosis, given several doctors told us you're too young to have endometrial cancer. After much discussion, we began to feel driven to inform and help educate other young women about what symptoms they should be concerned.
Having both been teachers, it seemed natural for us to look for a way to share Alex's cancer journey in order to help other young women avoid such a shocking diagnosis or possibly navigate a similar path. A podcast seemed the best way to get the word out, and that's how Down There Aware was born.
4 years later, our mother-daughter duo has gone from educating and informing to advocacy and action, with a fresh and sometimes very interesting and somewhat humorous multi-generational perspective.
We look forward to sharing with you Season 4 as we advocate, take action, and make it a priority to always be Down There Aware.
Welcome back to another episode of Down There Aware. We're here, and it is hot.
It is hot, literally.
Miserable.
100 degrees.
It is a scorcher.
But thank goodness for air conditioning and ceiling fans.
All of the above.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
For sure.
And a lot of people went back to school.
Yeah, it is that time of
Teachers,
year.
kiddos. College is not back yet, thank goodness. I work at a university, and my least favorite part is the students. We had this discussion today, in fact, that it was like, I like what I do and I like working at a university, but man, those students are terrible.
And you wouldn't have a job without them. So.
True, I would not have a job without them. And I have to remember I was a student once. I was probably just as annoying, you know. It's that age, like that 18 to 22.
Know-it-all.
Know-it-all, except they don't know how to walk. They're jumping
park or drive.
Right, they're jumping in front of your car like it's Frogger. So, yeah, good times.
If you live in a college town, you can sure tell the difference. When
school is in session and when it's not.
Session and when you're enjoying the summer empty roads. And,
oh man, are they?
What a difference.
I know. I'm trying to be annoying. And there we go. All right.
Oh.
Well, we have an interesting topic today, mainly born of frustration, born of personal experience.
Well, and seeing patterns.
Yeah, continual patterns. And I don't even feel just us, like I have had conversations with multiple different groups of people who have all kind of had the same conclusion.
Yeah.
And that is, in the world of medicine, attention to detail is really not a thing anymore.
No,
it really is lacking.
And it can cause huge issues.
Major issues.
Well, and interestingly enough, we had planned to talk about this today.
And we have some examples from today.
Yes. I had a colonoscopy today.
First off, round of applause for Mary Massey. She was up at the crack of dawn. She didn't sleep. She had to do all the prep. If you know, you know. And what your thing was at 6 o'clock you had to show up.
I had to be there at 6.
And that's not fun. And after a short nap and meal, you're here, raring and ready to go for recording an episode. So now, in all honesty, if the tables had turned, I think I would have been like, oh, I can't do it today. I can't record today.
Well, but here I am.
Mom, the motivation.
You stuck with me. But the reason why I'm sharing that I had a colonoscopy today, it's not necessarily news, is because I thought how ironic we're talking about the lack of attention to detail in the medical community with what happened to me today. Just to make a long story short, and then we can reflect, I went in for the procedure, did all the prep like I was supposed to, in fact, I left the instructions on my bar. Now, this is my third colonoscopy, so I've done this before. on the bar just to make sure every day leading up to it I was doing what I was supposed to and all.
The bar in their house. She doesn't frequent
No.
the neighborhood bar.
The bar. After today, though, I don't know. Anyway, the bar in our house. So, make a long story short, in the instructions it said if you are on any of these blood thinners, and it named a bunch of blood thinners, the nurse will call you before your procedure and discuss with you whether you should cease the medication 2 to 7 days before the procedure. Well, I'm on a blood thinner. I'm on Eliquis, but Eliquis was not one of the ones listed. So I thought, well, even if Eliquis is included, the nurse is going to call me and tell me if I need to quit taking it. Now, I'm going to stop and say, in my gut, I thought I should not be taking this before going in.
But you're not the medical professional.
I'm not the doctor.
And you were given instructions, and we tend to be rule followers, and so we do what we're told.
Yes, even though I just thought, I probably shouldn't, but I didn't want to stop taking my Eliquis because of my AFib unless a doctor said that's what you need to do.
For sure, because, sorry, a little bit of bleeding is not as bad as going to AFib and having
a stroke.
A stroke.
So, I took my Eliquis just like I'm supposed to. So, one medical professional after the other, as I went through the process, said, "Oh, you took Eliquis last night? Oh, no, you took, I'm going to have to go get so-and-so. Oh, no." And the doctor finally came in and said, "You shouldn't have taken the Eliquis." I said, "Well..."
Mom came with the receipts.
I brought the instructions from your office, and right here, and I pointed to what it said, and he said, "Well, that is outdated, and the nurse should have called you." Well, woo!
Whose fault is that?
Yeah, a lot of good that did me. He said, "I'm going to go ahead, since you prepped, and do the colonoscopy, but if I find anything, I can't do anything else." And wouldn't you know, he found a couple polyps, and so I have to go through all of this again and have another one because of a lack of attention to detail. The nurse did not call me. They didn't have proper instructions on the instructions.
Yeah, because it sounds like they mean you should never take a blood thinner for this procedure. Like, that's the update, right? Like, because it just seems...
Oh, like when I got there today, that's what he said. That's
yeah,
what you're saying, yeah,
right, if that's outdated,
right,
then the updated is you should not take any blood thinner. Well, why the heck hasn't your office staff sat down for 2 minutes and updated your document?
I mean, I actually had to go into the office to make this appointment.
And when they... Now, let me ask you this. When they gave you those documents, did they go over them with you?
They went over the part at the bottom that has blanks to fill in about, because your appointment time is unique to you.
Right.
And so it says you have to stop eating so many hours, and then there's a blank because they don't think you can do math. They put what time that means.
Right.
Now, they paid attention to that detail.
Right, and if they're using that document, it needs to be accurate.
Yeah, why, anyway, that is going to cost the doctor his time coming in again for a procedure.
Well, and not just time, but money. And is your insurance going to cover it again?
Because if my insurance doesn't cover it, the doctor's going to cover it.
Right,
because
it was their fault.
It was their fault. And he even, this is the other thing, all of the nurses who said, "Oh, you took Eliquis. Oh, you took," and they even said when I showed them the instructions, and this is what I call hugging the mountain. I take those things with me.
Yeah. Always take your documentation.
Yes, and when I showed them, they just shook their head and said, "They should have called you. They should have called you." Not one person, including the doctor whose office screwed up, said, "I'm sorry." Not one.
Well, and it makes you wonder where was the missing link?
Yeah.
Was it that they didn't know you were taking Eliquis, that they didn't put it right into the computer what your medications were, and so it was never flagged of they need to call you, and that it wasn't that the nurse didn't call you, other than that she wasn't told by whatever computer system that these are the patients you need to call? Or was it just neglect, that they knew that you fell through the cracks, they knew you were taking Eliquis, but for whatever reason somebody went home early that day, or they thought they finished the calls, or whatever?
Don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know.
But like I said, I did have to go into the office.
Yeah.
And have an exam, sit with and I always take my sheet of color-coded prescription drugs and over-the-counter drugs.
We should put like a sample, template of that, of how Mom takes her medication to the doctor, because it's just really helpful.
I have them all separated by what I take for my heart, what I take for diabetes, anyway, and so I had to, I always leave that with them, even if they say, oh, here, you can have this back. I say, I don't need it back. You can have it, put it in my file. Of course, files are digital now, so they put it into the computer. So did she not put it into the computer?
Right.
Why, when we went over my drugs, didn't she say, oh, you're on blood thinner, you're going to have to stop that X number of days before you...
Right.
I mean, that would be the time to do it, because I'm sitting there with my notebook and pen, and I would have written that down.
Right.
The doctor did ask me today who I met with the scheduling, and I said, I don't know. I don't know her name.
Right.
But trust me, I'm going to be writing down names. I always do that when Alex is in the hospital. I write down the nurses' names, and mainly so that I know if I've talked to somebody about something, I know who I talked to.
It's less of a gotcha and just more of a I need to know.
So I'm going to start doing that with whomever I speak with. It's just...
yeah, it is.
Oh, so frustrating. Now I got to do that again.
It's just really crazy that something that is so important, like not taking a blood thinner for a medical procedure where you could have excessive bleeding, that it's not more important to pay attention to those details.
And you can't, he couldn't do what he needed to do.
Right, because a colonoscopy is not just looking at your colon. No. It is also identifying, they clip them or cut them out or whatever right then because you're under.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
It just, it's kind of mind-boggling that, people don't pay closer attention.
And that's a big deal.
It is. And, even, Sadie, poor itchy girl. But you're back on your meds right now. But even, little things like my full name is Alexandra. That's it. D-R-A. That's how it ends. So many people call me Alexandria. And sure, in the scheme of things, big whoop. But legally, I am not Alexandria. And if you put that name that is not my name on medical paperwork, there's going to be an issue at some point. And how many times when you're in the hospital or for a procedure, you have a wristband and they make you confirm your name and birth date, name and birth date, name and birth date.
And then they recite your number, your patient number.
And it's just so specific. And it's how, and what's funny to me is, it's usually when people call me and they make an assumption. It's that, it's all on social media all the time, and where it's a paragraph and every word is misspelled.
Yes.
But the first letter and the last letter and maybe a vowel or something are correct, and you can read it just because of the way we read.
Most people can read it.
The way most people read is just by kind of looking at a whole word instead of sounding it out continually. And so if you look at my name written and you are only familiar with Alexandria's, then that's what you're going to say.
Right.
And that's the assumption. And so instead of paying attention and taking just an extra half a second, not even 30 seconds, half a second, and saying, okay, Alexandra, that's what it is. So it's really small, and it doesn't bother me anymore, but other than it's important to be accurate.
Well, because if it is written incorrectly, it could cause huge issues.
Major issues.
Yeah. And speaking of that, as I was looking, I wrote a blog about this years ago, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes. But as I was reading over that, just to kind of refresh my memory about how frustrating it is.
And this has been going on for quite some time, and nothing's changed.
Yes. I came across this article about a mistake that a Bristol Myers Squibb company made, pharmaceutical company, with Eliquis medication. Interestingly enough.
Oh, what a coincidence.
And the pills were labeled 5 milligrams, but each pill was only 2.5 milligrams, so it was half the dose. And, people who have thrombosis or AFib or blood clots, or, they depend on those blood thinners to keep them safe.
And the accuracy of the dosage. I mean,
so important.
Your doctor doses you for a specific reason, for a specific amount.
Right.
And, that's just common sense.
Right.
Wow. Doesn't it make you wonder what are the checks and... Sorry, the camera battery died. But as I was saying, doesn't it make you wonder what checks and balances are in place, if there are any, and then how it got through? Like, at what point, where was the weak link?
Well, and if ever there needs to be checks and balances, it's with life and death situations in the medical community.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there are a lot of them somewhere, but these mistakes happen. You hear about pharmacies who get the wrong medication, or they give out the wrong medication or dosage, and people die.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought about why is it happening? Where have we come to that this happens? And I have a theory, as a former teacher, that we went through a period in the 90s where we coddled children. We didn't want them to fail anything. We didn't want to put red marks on their papers.
Well, it was the participation trophy generation.
And the warm and fuzzy feeling. And we kind of went overboard with that, in my opinion. And so we didn't say to a child, you need to do that again. It's not right. Here, correct these mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't expect children to work and work and work until they got something right. And those now are the people who are in the workforce.
That's really pretty accurate. And I think, now I haven't been a school teacher in a while, but I do interact, as we previously mentioned, with university students.
And you love so much.
I do. And it really is amazing to me at what they don't think about. And what they don't care about, what is not important. And I think that transfers, right? Like, it might just be something here in school, but that really does transfer into the real world when, I work with business students, so maybe not life or death, but pharmacy and doctors and people who really are dealing with life and death, what that means.
Yeah. And that's my concern. And we talk about here being your own advocate, and that's really what you have to do. Now, in hindsight, what I probably should have done is called the office myself.
And isn't that sad?
When I didn't hear from the nurse, right. I should have called.
But you shouldn't have to. If the paper says the nurse will call you. If there's a reason to, the nurse will give you a call to let you know, to instruct you further. And then nothing. Yeah. And it's like, I don't get it.
Well, so I made the assumption, and I know what they say about assuming, but I made the assumption I didn't get the call, so it wasn't an issue.
Well, and I wouldn't even call it an assumption. It's factual.
The conclusion
that you drew
from their directions.
Right, these are the directions. This is what happened. This is what didn't happen. Done. Boom. Ready to go.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it can seem nitpicky. It can seem, that, you're taking this too seriously or whatever, but it can turn out to be a life or death problem, particularly with medications or other things. And, you said something when we were talking about earlier, your appointment, the anesthesiologist asked you how much you weighed because on the form, she couldn't read it.
She couldn't read.
Whoever had, written down her mom's weight in kilograms. And of course, mom knew what she was in pounds, but didn't know the conversion. And that's critical information.
The anesthesiologist has to know your weight.
They have to know how much you weigh.
How much anesthesia to administer.
Right. So it's just one of those things that's even just handwriting.
Those are numbers. How hard is that to write
right,
3 numbers?
And didn't she say that it looked like a letter, like a 2 or a 4? Those are numbers.
And an S,
Right. Yeah.
Numbers and letters. And she said, that's what this looks like. And,
like an address.
It was crazy. And that was another attention to detail.
Yeah.
How hard is it to write those numbers?
It's not.
Well, and going back to how we treated students in the 90s, it wasn't just teachers, but I think it was parents as well. And I told this story in my blog about when Alex was young and she was washing dishes one day.
She'll never let me live this down.
And she would wash them and, put them in the drainer. And when I walked over, I saw there were soap suds all over the dishes in the drainer. And I said, Alex, you're going to need to redo those. You didn't rinse them well enough. And all she wanted to do was get outside and play. She didn't care. She was just whipping through that chore. And I said, you're going to need to take those out and do it again and rinse them all. And she got all upset and crying and fussing.
Because it's physically painful. Doing a chore to do a chore and then to have to redo a chore. Come on.
And so the more upset she got, I finally just said, look, I am not doing my job if I don't teach you. One day you're going to be a grown-up and you're going to be living by yourself and you're going to need to have these skills. I'm not doing my job as your mother if I don't teach you how to do this properly, because you're going to drink out of a glass that tastes like soap. And you're going to wonder why. So I said all that to say, I think we don't always take the time with children. We're busy. We've got our phone in our hand.
Yeah.
We've got too much going on. It took time to go back, not only to explain all that to her, but to have her do it again, and for me to supervise it. It means I wasn't getting anything else done.
Yeah.
Supervise it, make sure it got done correctly. But I think we kind of got away from that, really taking the time and the effort to go over and over and to expect better. To expect a better job. I've always said children will rise to your expectations.
Well, and I think also, just as time has gone on, we have gotten a lot faster at a lot of things. And a lot of times that's a point of pride, right? We don't walk across the earth anymore. We fly planes. And instead of taking months to walk across the earth, it takes mere hours. And so in some ways, that innovation is really good. And even in terms of, instead of handwriting a letter and giving it to the Pony Express and they put it on a horse and they, take it away, I can send a text or write an email. But because of the speed of things, and we have this expectation to get it out, we almost feel like there's no time to reread and take a minute and look at. And it's not just writing, right? But anything we're doing, it's just to get done, just to do.
Right.
And how many times have you looked at your watch to look at the time, or turned on your phone to look at the time, and 10 seconds later, it doesn't register what time it was.
Yeah.
And you just kind of go through the motions. And the same thing, if you're making anything from a box, everybody has done this. You throw the box away. And then you forget how much milk you're supposed to put in.
And you go dig it out.
And then you go dig it out. And then you look at it. And then okay, I got it. You throw it away. And then you forget what the oven should be set on. And then you have to dig it out again. And it's just that attention to detail of taking the time in the beginning, instead of having to go back to the trash can and get the box again, and looking at it and saying, okay, I need this many eggs and this much milk, and the oven needs to be preset to this and whatever, and then throwing it away. or maybe just keeping it on the counter until you're done. But, you know, it's that
Exactly.
whole, we're just in a rush to do everything. And I wish we'd just slow down a little bit.
Well, and back to the dishes, we had a dishwasher.
Yes, we did.
But I still think that's a good skill for children to learn. Even if they have a dishwasher, there are going to be times when you won't have a dishwasher, or it'll be broken, or there's something that you're not supposed to put in the dishwasher. And
yeah,
so important. Just as you were talking, I thought about another lack of attention to detail medical thing that happened to you after one of your surgeries. Remember the staples?
Oh my gosh. Can I tell this story?
Oh, please.
So this was after I don't think I've ever told this story, but in a nutshell, I had my ICD placed, and originally it was going to be this new fancy kind of ICD that instead of sitting up here, if you're not watching YouTube, you wouldn't know, but instead of sitting up here on your chest, it sits under your arm.
An SICD. Yeah,
it's called a subcutaneous, and instead of the leads going directly into your heart, they sit on the outside subcutaneously right under the skin. And so it's safer, it's better for younger people. It had all of these positive things. We fought and fought. My doctor fought with my insurance company to cover it. It was a huge ordeal. Well, he gets in the operating room and it doesn't work. And he, in order to, you know, make sure that the operation was a success, they have to shock you, and it wouldn't shock, and they can't shock you until they sew you up. So he sewed me up and opened it up, the same incision under my arm, shut it, or, you know, sewed it up, opened it up, whatever. Finally, he put in a normal one. So now I have all of these scars everywhere, all of these incisions that weren't all supposed to be there. And however many weeks later, 2 weeks later, you go back to your post-op appointment, and it's time to get the staples taken out. And that's not a pleasant experience. It's not,
especially where that...
Yeah, it's really sensitive right under your arm. And I mean, it's not painful per se. Like, I've been in pain, but it's annoying. It's a nuisance. So, you know, the girl's doing it, gets them all out, whatever. Well, that night, I think it was the first time, like, I could take a real shower. And I was kind of scrubbing under my arm, and I was like, what is that? And I had Mom look, and sure enough, there was a staple. So we go back to the doctor's office the next day. She takes it out. Same girl. Takes it out. Okay, good. All done.
Now, let me just interject. This same girl is a physician's assistant. It wasn't a tech, or a volunteer.
Volunteer. Please don't let a volunteer take your staples out.
I mean, this is a learned, educated staff member.
And so we, get that staple taken out, whatever. And lo and behold, I'm taking a shower that night, and there is another gosh darn staple sticking out. And finally, Mom's next door, I was staying with Mom and Dad at the time because I couldn't take care of Sadie and all that. And Mom's next door neighbor works in the cardiologist. She's a nurse practitioner in
a different office.
A different office, but in the cardiology practice.
Yeah.
And she texted her and she said, okay. And so sure enough, here comes Jenny with her kit and her gloves, and she's like, let me. And so she went in, and I think she found 2 more.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those where it was like one after another. And like, they're not stitches. I don't know. Like I don't know how you missed them. I really don't.
Especially when you went back the second time.
Right. And I don't know if this is correlated, and the longer version of this is definitely a story for another time. But that's the incision that I got MRSA in later on. So maybe having staples in there longer than, I don't know. I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just saying, like, come on, people. But she was very clearly distracted. While she was doing it, because she was talking to Mom, and
and just no attention to detail, to the task at hand.
Yeah. And
so what does that do? That means Alex had to go back another time. That means we had to figure out how to have it finally resolved.
If Jenny didn't live next door, we would have had to go in a second time.
Yeah, a third time.
I mean, like, it was just over and over again. And I mean,
and those may seem like minor things, but if they could happen over and over and over and over, which is what
I was gonna say, we have enough medical stuff happening. It happens over and over and over.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've seen a pattern, and it's really disheartening.
Yeah.
It's annoying at first. I don't get angry about it because it's just not worth it to me. I mean, I'm frustrated that I have to go through the unpleasantness of another, prep and colonoscopy, but I wish I could fix it. I just wish.
Well,
I
and
could
we've
fix
talked
it.
a lot about how wouldn't it be nice that we could like have a consulting business where we go in and fix doctors' offices, and to some degree, I don't think they care. I mean, like,
they're gonna take one look at us and say, "You're gonna what?"
Right, exactly. So, that attention to detail. So I would encourage you, we haven't done like a challenge in a while, but slow down a little bit this week and next week, because this will come out on a Thursday. But yeah, take a minute, take a beat, slow down, enjoy this scorching weather that we're dealing with, and because attention to detail is so important.
Well, and certainly very important in medicine, but in every aspect of life, just be careful. Just take a few minutes, and I think you're right. I think it's a time thing. We rush everywhere we go.
And to what end?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Down There Aware. Be sure to like and subscribe on our new YouTube channel, as well as on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us at Down There Aware on all social media sites: Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. If you have it, we're there at Down There Aware. You can learn more on our website, www.downthereaware.com, and always get in touch with us, downthereaware@gmail.com. See you next week.